Everywhere you turn, you see AI. New tools, clever prompts, and lots of hype about what they can do for your writing. But these tools also carry important risks, limitations, and implications, especially in scientific and medical writing. This video kicks off a series on how to use AI responsibly, including some key risks and limitations to consider, some best practices for using them, and how these tools can and can't help refine your writing. And in this video, we'll focus on some key risks and limitations to keep in mind. And if we haven't met, hello, my name is Crystal Heron. I'm a trained biomedical scientist turned clinical researcher and now scientific and medical editor. And since 2011, I've helped scientists, clinicians, and medical writers communicate with clarity and confidence. So in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the risks and limitations of using AI tools for your writing. And I want to clarify what I mean by AI, because AI is such a broad term. And I'll mostly be talking about LLMs, or large language models, which are what many people are using for writing. And I will likely use both terms in this video. Now, I think that LLMs can be helpful technology tools, but they are not complete solutions. I kind of like to think about them as inexperienced assistants, maybe like interns. And I think that you need to be aware of the limitations and the ethical implications of using LLMs, which I will get into. Now, these tools are evolving quickly, which means that my thoughts may change in some ways. So these are my thoughts as of April 2026. And I'll start with a quick overview of some of the things that you may already be familiar with, and then I'll get into some of the other things that are on my mind that may be on your mind too. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think about AI is privacy. So AI can have issues with data privacy and idea privacy. And we've heard a lot about how AI tools violate copyrights of articles that are behind paywalls or content on websites and even published books. So that is a huge issue, and you need to be sure that you are not violating copyrights by using text generated by AI tools. Now, these tools are also using your conversations or interactions, I'll call them, to train their models, which means they could be using your proprietary ideas. Now, in paid versions, you might have more privacy and confidentiality, and companies may not use these details to train their models. And that is more likely to be the case if you have an in-house tool or a special contract with an AI company. But there are also different levels to these contracts, so be sure to read the privacy policy very carefully. And don't upload confidential or proprietary information without explicit permission and trust in doing so. Now, another thing that I'm thinking about is hallucinations. So we've heard a lot about AI hallucinating or fabricating inaccurate information. And when this goes unchecked, it can lead to false information being published, to retractions, and to the spread of misinformation. And this can be due to false data or inaccurate details or even strange synonyms of terminology. And you might have heard of digital fossils. And this is when an error is preserved and reinforced in AI systems. Kind of like biological fossils that are trapped in rock. Digital fossils become permanently embedded in scientific literature. And that can cause a whole host of problems, like undermining scientific progress and reliability. So these hallucinations and fabrications can also lead to false publications being cited. And they can be hard to spot. And I recently read an article about a researcher who saw a paper that cited her, but the references seemed a little off, but could be right. So she actually had to double check her CV, and she found that they were false references. Now, they were strikingly similar to the actual reference, but still false. And when you cite a false reference or any false or hallucinated information, that can damage your credibility. Not AI's credibility. It can't be held accountable for these problems. Only you can be held accountable for these problems. So that is something really important to keep in mind. Now, another thing that I am thinking a lot about is how AI cherry picks data or text. And this might mean pulling specific numbers or words or phrases or sentences, even whole blocks of text. And so when you are looking at sentences or details in isolation like this, it lacks nuance and context, and it can be biased. And this is really important to consider in science. Now, to be clear, cherry picking was happening long before AI came into the picture. So some authors will just cherry pick data or sentences without reading the full paper to get the full context because they are busy or overburdened. And some people have called this lazy author syndrome, but I think this term also lacks some context because scientists and clinicians are juggling a lot, and the literature is growing exponentially. So it's a lot to keep up with on a busy schedule. So I would prefer to rename lazy author syndrome to maybe overburdened author syndrome. I actually cover this syndrome in more detail in another video, and I'll add a link to that in the description box. So AI cherry picking is perpetuating a bad problem that already exists. And one thing to keep in mind is that when you do this, you lose context and nuance, which is important for scientific integrity. But more than that, you also overlook that when you cite a reference and how you write about that reference reflects on you and your credibility. So do your due diligence on what references you are citing and what you are saying about those references because they reflect on you and your credibility. Now, another thing that I am thinking about is how AI tools mimic the literature. And the literature is plagued with poor writing, so it's just perpetuating the problem. And it makes all the writing sound the same, which means that your writing will not stand out and will not be an authentic representation of your voice and your thinking. Now, AI might generate words for you, but only you can transform those words into your message and your voice. And you also need to be able to discern what is good and bad writing, and that takes skill. Unfortunately, most researchers and even many medical communicators don't get formal training on how to write or how to identify good writing. Now, they might know that something feels off, but they don't necessarily know why. Or they might have fallen into the trap of overly complex writing that is cast as academic writing. And I put it in air quotes because I have some feelings on that I will talk about in another video. But the problem with complex writing is that it just buries your science. So if you want to get some training and develop your ability to discern good and bad writing, you might consider checking out my Scientific Writing Simplified course in the Red Ink Academy. You'll get all the skills you need to take AI-generated text and turn it into clear, persuasive writing that reflects you and your important work. We have lots of incredible success stories. I'll add a link to the description box in case you want to check it out. So another thing that I am thinking about with AI tools is that they don't think critically. They actually don't think at all. They are prediction models. They generate words based on probability without any idea of their meaning. So they lack nuanced understanding and context, which you've heard me say many times in this video. Now, these tools might be able to help you think about things differently based on the words that it generates. You might make new connections or get inspired in some way, but these are not coming from something that is actually thinking. And even if it did think critically, you might want to ask yourself, do you want someone else doing your thinking for you? Do you want someone else telling you what your opinions and interpretations should be? Do you want a machine to be in charge of your integrity and credibility? Because when you offload the work onto AI, you are taking that risk. So something else that I'm thinking a lot about is how AI can diminish your writing and original thinking skills. And you might have even heard of the term deskilling that we're hearing a lot in the workplace. And actually, last year, there was a study that came out that showed how AI is correlated with a decline in thinking. Although the paper is published on arXiv and not yet published in a peer-reviewed journal, but I'll add a link to it in the description box in case you want to check it out. So aside from this study, I'm thinking a lot about how this is affecting your thinking, but I'm also thinking about it a little bit differently. So I know that many people like to use AI tools, LLMs, because they want some relief from the hard work of writing. But I think that writing is hard not because the writing itself is hard, but because the thinking needed to write is hard. But this hard work of thinking and the process of refining your writing is how you refine your thinking. If you over-rely on LLMs, you are depriving yourself of the opportunity to refine your thinking. So let me give you an example. Many people struggle to write the discussion section of manuscripts. And one reason for this is because they have to comb through the vastness of the literature, which is growing exponentially. But the other reason is that they have to do the hard work of thinking about their research and how it fits into that vastness of the literature. And all that thinking and organizing and analyzing is excruciatingly hard work. But as you are doing that hard work and refining the writing about these details, you are also refining your thinking. You are problem solving and making connections you would not have otherwise made until you sat down to write. And that hard work is what makes you the expert. So that is something I'm giving a lot of thought to. There is so much value in that struggle with your writing. Now, another thing that I'm thinking about is that a core limitation of large language models and AI tools is that they lack consciousness or awareness. And this consciousness is crucial for crafting writing that connects with readers in the way that they need, physically, mentally, emotionally, and intellectually. And this connection requires empathy, a consideration of the human experience, and an understanding that communication is a two-way process. Now, AI can emulate these things, but only a human has the consciousness, the intention behind the words. Now, I've met many authors that focus on communication as a one-way process. They focus on writing to readers, to share information and their ideas with them. But to make an impact on readers, a real impact, to be memorable, they need to focus on writing for readers, to influence how they think, how they act, how they feel. And this requires consciousness, awareness, and intention. And these are uniquely human. So there are a lot of things that I'm thinking about when it comes to using AI tools in scientific and medical writing. And I would love to know what you are thinking about as well. I hope you will share your thoughts in the comments and that we can continue the conversation there. And I also want to clarify that I am not against AI. It's an incredible tool and it can generate content at incredible speeds. But speed without integrity is just a waste and can erode trust in your work, in you, and in science. So next week, I'll share some best practices for using AI, and I'll talk about the value that you bring as the human behind the AI in the writing process. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in the next video.